I do want to ask you about US aid and the comments that Bill Gates made the other day, and I know that you called him.
Yeah, he's a huge liar.
I know you've said that already. I wondered.
Also,
and I'm just.
Who does Bill Gates think he is to make comments about the welfare of children, given that he frequented Jeffrey Epstein?
That's not right. That's better. That's much better. I like that much better. I hope you do too. Should get you like a little closer. Yeah, I give you the good stuff. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I am your host, Joe Nierman, a.k.a. Good Lawgic. Hope you're all doing well. That your Monday went well. As we're heading towards July 4th weekend, celebrating 250. That's right. We're getting closer and closer and closer to the 250th anniversary. And as we draw near, it seems the DOJ is zeroing in on some of America's fiercest, starkest enemies. Enemies from within and without. By that, I'm referring to the same person. I'm referring specifically to Neville Roy Singham, someone whose name has come up once or twice on this show before. We're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive into the current investigation coming out of the Southern District of New York against billionaire leftist Neville Roy Singham and what it is that he is purportedly being investigated for. He pretty much is referred to as George Soros 2.0. That's not to say he's badder than George Soros. Simply that in many ways, he reminds folks of George Soros throwing hundreds of millions of dollars towards the destruction of this country. And when I say within and without, what I mean is he's technically, from what I understand, an American citizen who's living communist China. So within, without. There you go. Also today, SCOTUS dropped a handful of decisions today. Most of them were pretty brutal. One of them was good. One was really good. But most of them are pretty brutal. And it's basically giving us an opportunity to reflect on the author of at least one of those terrible decisions, that being Justice Amy Coney Barrett, ACB, as her friends call her, although those seem to be numbering fewer and fewer on our side of the aisle. But indeed, she. I want to take a little bit of a look at how we got here, how we got to having Amy Coney Barrett, and a very interesting theory as the selection process. As we do a brief overview of today's Supreme Court decisions, I was thinking perhaps of looking through the most significant downturn today, which was the decision in coming out of the Supreme Court relating to Mississippi's mail-in ballots and the terrible implications as to the ramifications of that decision with respect to any hope of curbing the rampant fraud that we see, certainly for the forthcoming election. It's not hard to find a little bit of a silver lining in it. There's a little bit of a silver lining in that particular decision, potentially. Small. Who knows? But I'll tell you what that silver lining is, because I'm like basically Joe glass half full guy, very much half full, and it's outside. It looks like rain, so for all we know, it's going to be like 3/4 full. Like by the time I finish the show, could be. You never know. Also, today, Alex Murdaugh had his first hearing in the wake of the decision that came out of the South Carolina Supreme Court, granting him his wish to have a retrial of his murder conviction. Today, there was applications being made by the defense scheduling dates that were put out there and set up by the court, and we're gonna take a look at that. I have a goal which relates to this third topic, so we're gonna leave this topic for number 3. If we hit our goal, which is 15 super chats in quantities of $10 or more, 1, 5. Does that look right to you the way it is? Is the ones on your side? Yeah, that's right. Okay, 15 super chats in quantities of $10 or greater. And it doesn't have to be super chats. It could be Rumble rants. We definitely count Rumble rants. We also count like digger donations, Venmo, PayPal, whatever. Quantities of $10 or more. We get 15 of those, and presto, bingo, whammo. I will be giving you our 3. Well, we'll be watching the entire hearing, which is roughly an hour. It takes roughly an hour. If we don't get there, I'm still going to be covering it and giving you breakdowns, just like what happened. Although I'm going to have to do that a little bit on the fly because I'm hoping that we're going to hit our goal. I'm confident that we're going to hit our goal. And I was like, you know what? I still want to be able to assess it as it's coming down. I want to be able to sort of digest it and enjoy it. And I'm hopeful that we're going to hit our goal. If not, I'll pull it up and we'll review it together, and I'll give you my thoughts as to where it's going if we don't hit our goal. Because I do want to sort of take a look at that. Because Alex Murdaugh, to me, this trial is potentially something that's very juicy. Because I think he might win on retrial. I really do. I think he's got a pretty good shot. In fact, I'm actually going to see if I can actually give assistance to the defense. I'm taking steps to see if I can give some level of assistance, not on trial, not getting admitted pro at Vici in South Carolina. That's not happening. But I have some thoughts. As to strategy that could be very effective for the defense of Alex Murdaugh in this murder charge, because I don't think he did it. I think he's not guilty. No, not all you agree with me, but I think he's not guilty. And I have a pretty good strategy, I think, for them that they did not employ in the first trial, that I think they definitely should in the second trial. Who knows? Maybe I'll help. Maybe I'll help free an innocent man. Could be. But we only know that if you stick around here. Also, we got merch. That's right. Make sure you'll see in the links in the description. It's pinned in the chat. Is it pinned in the chat in Rumble? It's not pinned in the chat in Rumble. It's not. That's on me. I'm gonna pin it right now. Right there. Okay. Now, by the time you're hearing this, it's pinned. So yeah, let's get things started. Before I get precisely into the first topic of the day with respect to the investigations, a few things that I wanted to weigh in on the side, stuff you should be knowing, but things that you probably don't know that I'm hoping I can share with you. Some of this you may know, some of them you might not know. These are things that I found of interest. I sort of like starting the show with things going on from around the world that are a little bit off topic, that I'm not going to really make a whole segment out of it. But let's work this out of the way. And that first out of the gate is, that's not there. There it is. Excuse me. Colorado Supreme Court has unanimously blocked Democrat redistricting efforts in Colorado, which would have given them 3 more seats in the U.S. House. Delegation will remain 4-4. Uh-oh. So that's good news. That's good news. Or we're expecting it to. If it will continue in the same. If all the incumbents hold serve on both sides of the aisle, it will remain 4-4. Obviously, 3 ballot measures were struck down by the court. Huge win for Republicans. Court held that the redistricting proposals violated Colorado's constitutional single subject requirements. So there you go. There you go.
Colorado seeming poised to join the redistricting race. On Tuesday, a group named Coloradans for a Level Playing Field filed 4 different versions of a ballot initiative, which would allow voters to decide on a new congressional map for the 2028 and 2030 elections. This proposed map could net Democrats 3 seats in the House of Representatives. In order to be approved, the ballot would require 50 or 55% of the vote, depending on which version is used. Colorado seeming poised.
So there you go. See, I have good news for you. I got some good news for you today. I got a bunch of these links I want to share. We're just gonna work our way through the links. What was this? Oh, these are just things I set aside this afternoon that I was like, I think my audience might want to see this. The Schumer effect. Harry Enton coming in here letting us know that Chuck Schumer is drowning. He's drowning. I think his career is on life support. I really do. I think AOC is going to take him out. I really think she's going to end up being his replacement in the Senate next time he's up, which I think is in 2028.
It's no longer the overall electorate that doesn't like Chuck Schumer. Look at this change among Democrats themselves. Chuck Schumer's net favorable rating with Dems now versus the last time Democrats were going for that Senate majority. In early 2020, look at this. Chuck Schumer was 40 points above water, very much on the positive side of the ledger with Democrats. Look at this. Look at this change. This is nuts. Johnny B off on the side going, my goodness gracious. Now he's a point underwater with Democrats. Chuck Schumer.
With Democrats. Yeah. AOC comes in there. She will bounce him out so hard. He might like just drop out of the race. I don't think he'll run against her.
Schumer isn't unpopular overall. He is that. He's not just that. He's actually not popular with Democrats. Alyssa Slotkin, who's a moderate Democrat, her comments not coming out of left field.
Again, to be clear, this is among Democrats.
This is among Democrats.
I don't know why he's always moving around the way he does. I think that's part of his shtick. Is he's just like hyper dramatic for somebody who's supposed to be like, give me the news. But I did think it was interesting seeing that Schumer is drowning in New York. Well, drowning amongst Democrats, which means he's probably drowning. He's probably drowning in New York. Then I saw this. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I've talked a fair amount about the woke right. I have. I've talked a fair amount about it. And I got to tell you something. I think this guy's glowy, or like, I don't know, SPLC. He's definitely something. But he's taking aim at the woke right now. He's taking hard aim at what he considers to be Israel derangement syndrome. And what he said, I actually thought, I was like, yeah, that's a good point. That's a fair point. And I'm just going to, he's in such a weird place, this dude. He is in such a weird place.
Charlie Kirk was killed by Tyler Robinson.
This, in case you're unfamiliar with who he is, it's Nick Fuentes. Yeah, to understand a little bit about Nick Fuentes, I was introduced to Nick Fuentes through Robert Barnes, not directly through Robert Barnes. Robert Barnes debating him, where he basically seemed like the biggest racist on earth. And Robert Barnes said that the reason he was debating Nick Fuentes was that people should realize he is not really America first. And I'll tell you something. I mean, over here, I would ignore the source, because when he's telling you stuff that I think is insane, I'm telling you that's the source. But some of the stuff, the points that he makes here actually made me feel kind of a certain way, where he made me like angry, not with him, like alongside him rather than at him. He really made me angry, because he basically pointed out how we lost the GOP lost a unique opportunity because of the woke right over here.
He was. Tyler Robinson's transgender boyfriend sold him out. His parents turned him in. His DNA was found at the scene of the crime. His grandparents' gun was found in the bush, discarded after the killing. Tyler Robinson was the killer. He confessed. And what was Tyler Robinson? He was part of the radical left. He was in left-wing Discord servers. He organized with left-wing students. He was one of these people that would have been in favor of Zohran Mamdani. He's a radical left, trans liberation, socialist progressive, hick lib. That's what he was. He killed Charlie Kirk. And what immediately happened after Charlie Kirk died is all of a sudden there was a mandate from an angry nation, which was unequivocally destroy the radical left.
This is true, and frankly, I was when he reminded me of this, I was like, I totally we forget about this, because so much happened around Tyler Robinson, the Charlie Kirk story since then, that we forget how there was this cohesive, united effort to punish the insane leftists who committed this violent act, and there was this morally righteous indignation that we uniformly felt throughout our ranks.
Everybody in America was horrified by the violence. Everybody other than the most extreme elements on the left, young people and old people, black people and white people, men and women, boys and girls, gay people, everybody was horrified that Charlie Kirk was gunned down, gushing blood out of his neck at some campus college event. And the mandate was unequivocal, which is find the culprit, destroy them. And that's exactly what the government was going to do. Didn't they say Stephen Miller and Vance were on the case and they were going to root out and destroy DSA in these socialist cells across the country? But then what happened? What happened right after that is all of a sudden everybody started to muddy the waters and blame it on Israel.
That's true.
Suddenly there was this narrative that people were wearing maroon and there were these Egyptian planes chasing Charlie Kirk and there were a bunch of Israelis there. And what about the angle from behind him? Didn't Charlie Kirk didn't he just crash out on Bill Ackman? Would you like to know where this narrative originated? The narrative that Charlie Kirk was killed by Israel originated in the gray zone with Max Blumenthal. Max Blumenthal is a Jew. Max Blumenthal used to work for the SPLC, the Huffington Post, Slate, the most far-left publications that are out there. And you think this guy criticizes Israel? He was out there doing hit pieces against David Irving, the Holocaust, the World War II historian that happens to be a Holocaust revisionist for the SPLC. He's a radical leftist. He's a socialist. And Max Blumenthal is the one who initially promulgated the false narrative in the gray zone that Charlie Kirk might have been killed by Israel. Max Blumenthal made up the story that Bill Ackman crashed out on Charlie Kirk. He made up the story that Netanyahu tried to pay Charlie Kirk $200 million to stop criticizing Israel.
So you're all sitting here. I see the comments. I see the comments that's going on here. You're all sitting there saying Nick doesn't want Jews, Zionists anywhere. I know. He hates the Jews. He feels very uncomfortable with the Jews, and here he is basically defending Netanyahu. I don't know what world I'm living in anymore. He's defending Netanyahu, and Robert Barnes is basically calling Israel, the biggest poison that ever came to America. The reason I thought this fascinating is because, it's like the flip-flop here is from both sides is just astonishing to me. Where I'm just like, I don't know what I'm listening to anymore. I don't. Listen to this guy go.
Neither of those things were true. Bill Ackman brought the receipts. It turns out that Charlie Kirk asked for a meeting with Bill Ackman, selected the people that attended the meeting. And all those people then went on a trip to Israel after the retreat. This $200 million contribution was never corroborated by any other source. But that was the story that everybody took, Candace Owens included, and it was off to the races. And you know who else was pushing this narrative?
He's saying that Candace Owens picked it up from Max Blumenthal.
All over social media, the American Communist Party. The American Communist Party, headed up by Hazal Dink and that other nitwit Jackson Hinkle. Those were the people that were the shock.
Jackson Hinkle became huge by basically blaming every problem in America on Israel.
Troops pushing it on
He was
Twitter,
a nobody
and
before
that's
that.
because maybe some people have suggested that Tyler Robinson was in their Discord server. So whose head would have been rolling on the floor? Whose head would have been rolling down the steps had the government and society been unified against the radical left? It probably would have been those people that were pushing this narrative that it was anybody other than the radical left that did the killing. That's how it started. But then it kept rolling on and on.
His point is that this would have all our ire would have been directed at the radical left, but for the fact that it got subverted purposefully and turned into, like, let's try and figure out how Israel's to blame for this.
When the socialist Nicolas Maduro was extradited from Venezuela, who was out there saying that was an Israeli op? The far left. When ICE killed those two protesters and Hassan Piker and the radical left in Minneapolis were firebombing ICE facilities and attacking ICE and attacking Border Patrol, What did they say then? They said, well, ICE is trained by Israel. It's an Israel issue. And this is the pattern. The left is pushing their agenda everywhere, always, their ideological agenda. They're pushing their agenda covering up the murder of Charlie Kirk. They're pushing their agenda covering for Cuba and Venezuela. They're pushing their agenda covering for these Somalian migrants in Minneapolis. And in every single case, they hide behind Israel. And they say, oh, the left didn't kill Charlie Kirk. That was Israel. Oh, you think the left did it? What are you, with Israel? We didn't remove Nicolas Maduro because he's aligned with China and Russia. No. We removed Maduro because of Israel. What are you, with Israel? You support American empire? You're with Israel? Same thing with ICE. Oh, you don't support Somalians stealing all the tax money and sending it to their country? What are you, with Israel? ICE trained with the IDF, you know. What are you, with this pro-Israel administration? This is what the left is doing.
I heard it and I was just like, yeah. I really had forgotten just how unified we were in going after the left for what happened for Charlie Kirk, and how that totally got derailed. It was totally derailed. 10 minutes after they called Tyler Robinson, it was totally derailed. I haven't seen this yet, but I'm going to watch it with you. I haven't seen this yet. Just because sometimes I'll see something, I'm just like, okay, this is a title that just sounds juicy. Candace Owens fans completely embarrassed themselves on the Caleb Hammer show. A married couple of both Candace Owens fans appeared on the latest Caleb Hammer video and went even worse than you could possibly imagine. I'm going to give this like 2 minutes. We'll see if I'm liking this or not.
Like conspiracy theories and like I don't even know what the fuck is happening. What the fuck are we talking about?
Don't be talking about finances. Dog, we get a mortgage right now.
So that's why we're here,
but
though,
if we're based on
because he
conspiracies
needs help managing his money. When I pay my bill,
but what is this conspiracy shit?
Okay, which one? Charlie Kirk's not actually dead.
What?
Selena Gomez is actually dead, and her and Justin Bieber's love child is with.
What the fuck are we talking about?
Well, it's conspiracy theories.
Someone's killed my marriage out here.
Yeah, he doesn't really agree.
I don't know. I saw some videos, a lot on Twitter that day.
What day? Oh, yeah. Okay, that's fake though. So
you saw some people die, probably. Did that look like death?
No.
Yeah, it's questionable.
Oh,
it's questionable, dude. I've seen people shot. I've been part of shootings.
Movies. Does that look like death? That looks more like death than
I don't
Charlie
think
Kirk.
movies are like.
But it is.
I'll put it this way. You look at when you look at this situation, right? First off, a man shooting a shot that.
I can't. I don't even know. I can't. I feel like I'm making you dumber, and I can't do that. You don't come here to get dumber. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to blame my producer for that one. I'm sorry. That was not right. That was not right. All right. I have other clips that I was thinking about sharing with you, but now I have concerns. I have concerns now. What's happening? What was that? All right, let's get into our first story. Let's get into our first story. The new People's War and how money flows from Shanghai. None of this makes any sense to you when you're watching this. I know. It doesn't make any sense at all. But you're going to see how this is... Oh, stop. Oh, just enough of you. I hate Fox. Oh, God. A federal grand jury is investigating alleged financial crimes by Neville Roy Singham, the China-based tycoon whose fortune has funded a sprawling network of socialist, communist, and Marxist organizations across the U.S. over the last decade. According to some sources familiar with the matter, Grand Jury Manhattan has issued subpoenas as part of a probe launched by U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton for the Southern District of New York. Now, for full disclosure here, if you're a regular viewer of this show, you know that I was bashing Jay Clayton as your classic, typical, awful, terrible, disastrous, old school Tea Party Republican. He is a partner in, I don't remember which law firm it was. I remember seeing when I saw the name, it was like one of the 3 biggest law firms on the planet. And you know, really prestigious resume. And working in the Southern District of New York, which is notorious for basically being a hotbed of deep state. I was like, everything about him was smelling like deep state to me. Everything. So he's the one I think he's supposed to be coming in to take over for I think he was taking over for Pulte. That's what his job is. Like he's supposed to be coming in place of Pulte. But so maybe he started this instead in place of Pulte was coming in for Tulsi Gabbard. So I think that's where he's going next. But anyway, he's the Southern District of New York, one of the country's most powerful districts for federal prosecutions. Acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche authorized the investigation as the Trump administration seeks to crack down on fraud, money laundering, and other financial crimes in the multi-billion-dollar nonprofit industry. This is where I think we will actually have the most significant impact. If in fact we're successful in cracking down on these nonprofit entities, I think that this is actually could have some of the most significant impacts as far as trying to remedy the violent, hostile divisiveness that we see raging across this country for the last 6 years, maybe longer. Grand jury action probably goes back to 2015. Grand jury action follows a Fox News digital investigation published in mid-March, documenting how Singham pumped $285 million from his base in Shanghai into a Goldman Sachs philanthropy fund and 2 shell corporations, and then fed the money into a constellation of nonprofit organizations, media operations, and activist groups pushing sectarian division, identity politics, and support for socialist politicians. So this is who he's giving it to. He's giving it to those activists and the socialists and promoting identity politics. All these different stupid rallies that are paid for, that's where you'll find these people. The investigation has examined the movement of money in Shanghai's and Singham's financial network and attempting to determine if Singham, the organizations he funded, or their leaders committed wire fraud, bank fraud, money laundering, or other financial crimes according to sources familiar with the matter. Yeah, that would be good. That would be great. I'll come to this shortly. The prosecutors have presented evidence to the grand jury, which has issued subpoenas seeking bank records and other financial documents for organizations in Singham's network. Federal prosecutors use grand jury subpoenas as an investigative tool to compel the production of documents and testimony as they determine whether sufficient evidence exists to pursue criminal charges. There just has to be. Nicholas Baez, spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office from SDNY, declined to comment. Of course he did. Meeting with Goldman Sachs. According to sources, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent traveled to New York City earlier this year for a meeting with Goldman Sachs Chairman and CEO David Solomon. The men discussed the role of a Goldman Sachs philanthropic arm, GS Donor Advised Philanthropy Fund for Wealth Management, Inc. GS, obviously, for Goldman Sachs. Donor Advised Philanthropy Fund for Wealth Management. That facilitated the movement by Singham of millions of dollars in a network of U.S. nonprofits. So basically they discussed Goldman Sachs philanthropic arm, which was facilitating, that was helping Singham move his money around. The Treasury Department spokesman declined to comment. We're not going to hear what happened with Scott Bessent in that meeting. A person familiar with the meeting confirmed that it occurred, saying that Bessent had regular meetings with business leaders and declined to comment further on the substance of the meetings. They won't say it had anything to do with Singham or even had anything to do with the philanthropy division of Goldman Sachs. At that meeting, sources said Bessent delivered a blunt ultimatum. He said Goldman Sachs could face scrutiny for alleged conspiracy in the funneling of Singham money and urged Salman to cooperate with federal investigators. Follow the money. Follow the money. Another source familiar with the meeting said that it wasn't contentious and that Salman readily agreed to pledge his cooperation with the Justice Department investigation. So this is where you start getting actual sources. This is where you end up getting people who are in the room with Singham, people who could potentially testify against Singham. Like many U.S. companies, Goldman Sachs has had a long business relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, with Salman participating in a meeting, for example, on November 4, 2025, with He Lifeng, a member of the political bureau of the CCP, and director of the Office of Central Commission for Financial and Economic Affairs. Goldman Sachs spokesperson told Fox News Digital, quote, "As we have previously stated, all distributions from Mr. Singham's donor-advised fund were made to legal nonprofits as determined by the IRS." So, of course, they're saying we did nothing wrong here. There have been no distributions from the account since August 2023, and it was closed in early 2024. So, like, nothing's active now. By mid-May, with Southern District of New York investigation in full throttle, Salman joined a delegation of powerful American business leaders who accompanied President Donald Trump, Bessent, and other administrative officials to China to meet with Xi Jinping and other leaders of the Chinese Communist Party. The Goldman Sachs spokesperson said, "Our business activity and executive trips to China are completely unrelated to this matter, related to the Singham network," which is probably true. It's probably true. In a 5-part investigative series published earlier this year, Fox News Digital unearthed a 4-minute, 13-second speech in which Singham stood on stage at the Golden Tulip Hotel on November 13, 2025, for conference of the Global South Academic Forum, coincidentally just days after Goldman Sachs chief was in Beijing. Could be coincidence. Tricontinental Limited, a Singham-funded nonprofit, co-sponsored the event with academic institutions administered by the CCP. So this was Singham's own personal deal. He's like basically creating a stage for a platform to stand on. On stage, Singham openly supported a new world order promoted by Chinese President Xi Jinping and the CCP. During the speech, he called the United States a fascist nation, echoing the propaganda of the CCP, now also parroted by the streets of communist, socialist, and Democratic Party activists. This is his speech. We'll get the whole thing here because I don't want.
Thank you, comrades, friends. This study was conducted by almost 40 people, our friends at Guangzhou, Professor Liu. Many contributed to the editing and ideas. And it was actually something that made me very angry to do this research. Because when you realize those people in Leningrad, the people in China who died, whose stories are not told in movies in the rest of the world. In China, you have your own media movies. But remember, the majority of people in the global South, they watch Hollywood movies. And their stories are actually the stories of the American British. My father also was in Burma. There are 12 million people who died in South Asia, not in China, in this war. Half of them at the hands of the Europeans and the Americans.
Of course.
And mainly the Europeans.
Of course.
In Africa, also, 2 million died. The Japanese came here to China in 1931, but in Ethiopia in 1935. This fascist lie that the West says that there's a battle between fascism, democracy, and communism. They make a fake argument that there are 3 systems. I think Vijay has done a very good job of explaining that, in fact, fascism is actually a face of capitalism and imperialism, as is colonialism. These are the 3 faces of a system that quite now is getting very, very dangerous for us. The reason I think—
Who's us? Who is us?
This study and the role of the Global South Academic Forum and of China is this moment of history. If we want to understand international rules-based order, which is their favorite term, it was the Americans who took the Japanese scientists who conducted biological experiments against the Chinese, put them in off of any punishment. It was the English who took the Italian fascists and made sure they were not charged. The international rules-based order was created by another lie. which was that the fascists were all protected by the Americans and put into power in their countries, in Japan and in Italy. If we want to therefore have...
I can't take any more BS from this stupid moron. This jackass. Anyway, let's get back to... get me out. Really? Really? Fox is so stupid. I can't stand this site. The series revealed a 172-page report in which Singham outlined his theory of change, invoking 20th century Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong's battle plan to wage a people's war to spread communism. Mao was inspired by communist leaders Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin. Singham's rise as a global political financier accelerated after his February 2017 marriage to Jody Evans, the co-founder of Code Pink, a far-left activist group that has aligned itself with authoritarian regimes, including Iran, CCP. The Communist Party of Cuba and the CCP. According to sources, Evans is also a target of the investigation, emerging as a board member in the U.S. on many of the organizations that Singham funded. That same year, Singham sold his company, ThoughtWorks, for an estimated $785 million to a London-based private equity firm, Apex Partners. A spokeswoman for Apex Partners said the company wouldn't disclose the names of investors who pumped money into that sale, but sources told Fox News fellow investigators are looking for potential ties to CCP. After that sale, Fox News Digital found Singham began directing large sums of money into a network of organizations that now form part of a broader activist infrastructure in the United States and abroad. In its investigation, Fox mapped 223 transactions from 2017 through 2025 that moved $591 million across 5 continents through 67 core groups in the Singham network. They partner with hundreds of groups worldwide, resulting in a network of about 2,000 groups amplifying anti-US, pro-China messages. Of that money, Fox established a documented $278 million flowed directly from Singham into the organizations that sow discord in the United States, as House Ways and Means Chair Jason Smith put it earlier this year at a hearing, a dynamics called Foreign Malign Influence. In money laundering investigations, prosecutors typically examine 3 stages of alleged impropriety called placement, layering, and integration. Placement refers to the introduction of funds into the financial system. So it's bringing that money on in. Layering involves moving money through multiple entities or transactions to obscure its origin. And integration is the point at which the money reemerges. It's basically how you launder the money through different agencies. So this way people don't realize that when you have these crazy, hostile activist groups, that it's the original source of the money is coming from folks like Singham. Singham allegedly funneled $278 million from Shanghai into the United States through 3 key channels, the philanthropic arm of Goldman Sachs and 2 shell corporations that have since gone defunct. $164 million to Mutad LLC, a now defunct shell corporation established in 2017. $110 million to GS Donor Advised Philanthropy Fund for Wealth Management, like we mentioned earlier. And $3.5 million to Likewise Conceptions LLC, a now defunct shell corporation. So that's where the money came in from him, according to their investigation. The 3 entities then pumped the $278 million into 6 nonprofits. And they're all going to sound like your classic communist places. People Support Foundation got $167 million. Justice and Education Fund, $68 million. People's Forum, Inc., $22 million. Tricontinental Limited, $16.7 million. Code Pink, $1.3 million. Breakthrough BT Media, $1,098,000. The 6 nonprofits then funneled at least $223 million in other forms of support into a global network of organizations, including People's Welfare Association, established in 2019 with the address of a UPS store. Today, reporting about $12 million in revenue transformed into grants to undisclosed groups around the world. Countless unidentified organizations in 6 regions around the world, including Sub-Saharan Africa, Central America, even North America, are receiving tens of millions of dollars. The Answer Coalition, a communist organization whose Chicago address has been listed as the location of a Green Mill restaurant where Al Capone used to hang out. The Party for Socialism and Liberation, a loosely structured organization with shared leadership from the House of Singham, like the Becker father-son duo. Singham and Evans have responded to a repeated request for comment from Fox. In January, Becker and De Los Santos refused to respond to questions by Fox outside the People's Farm headquarters. Benjamin refused to respond to questions during protest in May. The Answer, none of these people, basically, the more people they asked, no one's willing to answer any questions. Let's sum it up that way. So that is what they're saying. Now, if they're legitimate, assuming they're legitimate organizations, the question is whether they're, funding more violent type of activity. Because alas, giving money to organizations that are pro-communism is not standing on its face and unto itself a crime. But when it's working so hard to try and keep things covered up, do you think that this is something that's not utterly nefarious? It's not like he's embarrassed by his views. It's not like he's embarrassed by it. So this movie that Job for Nine is referring to, Citizen Vigilante, I actually heard about it this evening. It's basically something that's, it's a movie that's an independent film, which is getting a lot of raves from MAGA, from what I understand, basically featuring this guy who takes justice on, it's a European movie, I think, who's taking justice on the migrants who basically are causing violence. So, and I think its star actor is a guy who has been blacklisted out of Hollywood for being too right-wing. So, yeah, I'm curious to try and check it out. But I have not yet seen it. From that video, Singham seems like a midwit. Yeah, he does. Did you guys Richards from CCP? Very useful idiot. Reminds me of Hunter and Joe. Just saying, midwits. I don't know. I'm not really even sure. They mentioned Apex there, but that's, I think, a small portion of the money that he has. And he's saying the implication that they tried to be giving from that $785 million is that might have been money that the CCP was giving him, which means that, for him to redistribute out to potentially organizations that are antagonistic to the United States. And it would not surprise me at all. I'm not raising the allegation, but I'm simply saying, would any of us be surprised if in fact he basically is trying to serve as a laundering spot for Chinese money coming into America to basically sow discontent here? And that could certainly be a potential legal problem for him. Franca! And totally unrelated news, Harbor Freight sells a wood chipper for $5.99. That's it. So many uses that you can have from a great wood chipper. So many uses. It's crazy that you can get it so cheap. It's crazy. Anyways, that video we were watching at the beginning over here, it's basically trying to show the flow of the money in a structural, in an easy to understand structural type of way that's perhaps more visually appealing, starting with Singham, going to 3 organizations and spreading out from 3 organizations to another 6 organizations, and basically branching out into multiple different ways of spreading that money around. And then ultimately coming back into it. 11. They mentioned it was in 5 different continents. So, and to me that actually makes a lot of sense. a lot of sense that, you know, this is not just America is the prime target. We are definitely the prime target of these communists. There's no question, but we're not the only target. So we should start talking about. I want to close out from there and start talking to you all about today's Supreme Court decisions, because today was a bit of a brutal day. And it was the usual suspects who we can blame for the idiocy that came down today. Specifically, I'm going to specifically refer to this case over here, which is known as Watson versus Watson, Mississippi, Secretary of State versus Republican National Committee. Now, this decision relates to mail-in ballots. I'm not going to go through the entire decision with you. A, because I like you and I don't want you to be depressed. B, because I think I'm just going to get a headache if I read much past the intro. We're getting enough of a feel for it. Basically, this decision was penned by Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Remember that white knight savior, that wonderful justice who looked so smug and sharp when she was quickly ushered into our hearts, minds, and a comfy, cozy lifetime appointment as a Supreme Court justice? Yeah, that Amy Coney Barrett, who's fueled one disappointment after another for us, as she routinely is. She's been the most likely justice to side with the anticipated 3 liberal justices of Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson. So the fourth one, whenever the ship starts tilting too far to the left, the fourth person in the boat invariably has been Amy Coney Barrett, either her or Chief Justice Roberts. They seem to fight with each other over who's going to be the first one to jump in. And as soon as 2 of them get in the boat there, that's when we get these terrible decisions. Now, we should not be surprised by today's decision, in particular this one here. We can be disappointed and should be. But basically, this is the question as to the issue before the court in the Watson case is whether or not Mississippi is permitted under federal law to accept ballots and count them towards their total in a federal election, because the election has to happen on the first Tuesday after a Monday in November, and they were accepting ballots that, as long as they were postmarked by election day, they were accepting them up to, under Mississippi law, for up to 5 days beyond election day, and as long as they bore a postmark that showed election day, they were being accepted and counted as ballots. So lawsuit commences, works its way all the way up to Supreme Court. You can tell when you're reading this decision, even in this opening, in the opening section over here, that they are very mindful that politically across the nation there is this hot conversation going on about the Save America Act. And you can tell from the way Amy Coney Barrett drafts this that she's trying to be crystal clear here that they are not in any way, shape, or form trying to prejudge what would happen if, in fact, the Save America Act were to pass. They're not saying that it would be legal. They're not saying it would be illegal. The implications we can draw is that they likely would be deemed legal as far as restricting states. One of the things that people have been talking about with respect to the Save America Act is states have the authority to do whatever they want, the time, place, and manner. That's all left up to the states as to decide, and that they have plenary authority in how to conduct their elections. Well, that's true, but constitutionally, there are certain obligations they need to abide by. And the implications of this decision, the silver lining I'll give you up front here, the silver lining is you can draw implications from this that if, in fact, the Save America Act had passed, and the Save America Act included therein would say you must count your ballots. Now, you must count only ballots that arrive on election day, that likely, based on this decision, would validly clamp down on all these states like Mississippi and more notoriously New York, New Jersey, California, and countless other leftist states that routinely have been accepting ballots long after election day. So the holding here is that the federal, so their holding is that the federal election statutes do not prevent, anyone do like that, damn it. Do not prevent Mississippi from counting absentee ballots postmarked by election day, but received up to 5 days beyond. No, nothing in the federal, why is that? Because they say nothing in the federal election day statutes requires ballots to be received by election day. By this logic, it can literally be received a month later and it would count. By this logic. The question for the court is narrow, and she starts with this in her section A to say, look, we're not getting into the Save America Act. I know you're thinking about we're dealing about the Save America Act. We're not. It's very narrow. It's whether counting ballots postmarked by election day but received up to 5 days later violates the federal election day statutes. Is that a violation or not? Plaintiffs do not challenge the general practice of absentee voting. Everyone says that, of course, absentee voting is fine, or the use of the United States Postal Service or common carrier to transmit ballots. They're not questioning about early voting or the counting or certification of votes after election day. The court also does not consider the scope of Congress's authority to regulate federal elections. This is, like I said, this is about SAVE. She's trying to say we are not wading into the validity of all the proposed Save America acts. We're not telling you it's good. We're not telling you it's bad, because we're not talking about Congress's authority to regulate federal elections. B, federal election day statutes do not preempt Mississippi's law because the defining element of an election has always been the state's electorate's choice of candidate. And a related federal statute, the Uniform and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, confirms that while federal law dictates when ballots must be cast, so this is what we mean by election day. That tells you when it has to be cast. But state law governs when they must be received. Well, that sounds like you're telling me that that the federal government is precluded. It is a fundamental canon of statutory construction that words generally should be interpreted as taking their ordinary meaning at the time Congress enacted the statutes. Where do you come to this? How do you come to the conclusion that state law governs as to when they have to be received? What is cast? It's not the hell. The court has likewise defined election as the expression of the electorate's choice. So as long as they express it by that time, doesn't matter when we hear about their expression. Explaining that from time immemorial, an election has been no more, no less than the expression by qualified electors of their choice of candidates. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. We don't know what their expression is. We're going to find out 3 days from now. The electorate's choice is made when voting is complete, not when ballots are received. Most recent amendment to the presidential election day statute bears this out. While inserting the phrase election day into the statute and marking the date as specific Tuesday, Congress also provided that when states modify the period of voting in response to certain force majeure events, force majeure means acts of God, like when there's some sort of calamity, like COVID or earthquakes or hurricanes. So when they modify their period of voting because of these calamities, the term election day shall include the modified period of voting. So Congress basically has said you can modify your period of voting. That's for force majeure. The Congress defined election day with reference to voting indicates that voting is an act governed by the statute. See, this is so stupid. What the hell are they supposed to? What are they supposed to say? UOCAVA, which requires states to permit absent military and overseas voters to cast absentee ballots in federal elections, and as a backup establishes a federal absentee voting system, reinforces the point. In detailing the system, UOCAVA repeatedly presupposes ballot receipt as a matter of state law. For example, to avoid any double counting, Yokava provides that the federal absentee ballots shall not be counted if a state receives the voter's state absentee ballot by the deadline for the receipt of the ballot under state law. Yeah, that could be. State law doesn't preempt federal law. Now, the reason that the state law, if anything, might require them to get it in earlier. It's not that they could. Let's imagine the state. This was stupid. Deadline for receipt of that ballot under state law. What if they say we can receive your ballots in December? What if they say that? Would that preempt federal law? Ridiculous. If the Election Day statutes establish a nationwide ballot receipt deadline, Yokava references to state ballot receipt deadlines would make little sense. If the Election Day statutes establish a nationwide ballot, no, because it could be coming earlier. It would make perfect sense. Imagine a state says, hey, if you're going to be mailing a ballot in here, we need to have it early because we don't want to sit here waiting for it. So in order to make sure you're going to get it in here in time, you have to get it to us by no later than the last Thursday in October. That's what it means. That's the sense that these 5 justices can't figure out what it means. I first heard this statute 30 seconds ago, and I figured that out. But you had months to mull this over. You couldn't come up with that? Finally, this interpretation is consistent with the Constitution's requirements for the Electoral College. The Constitution requires the day on which electors shall give their votes. Yeah, give their votes means I'm getting your votes. To be the same throughout the United States, but says nothing about the day for receipts. Yeah, it's because they weren't having them. Where in the Constitution is it talking about mail-in balloting? The Constitution thus envisions a system in which receipts of votes is necessarily divorced from voting? No, it doesn't. It's that they were contemplating everyone's voting in person. Why is it say necessarily divorced? If anything, you could read the Constitution and say that you're not allowed to mail in ballots, period. That you have to make your vote in person. It says the crucial uniform day is the day of voting while leaving receipt to happen later. It doesn't leave that anywhere. You're totally making that up here. God, so aggravating. This. Oh, shit. Plaintiff's contrary view that the Election Day statutes require ballots to be received by Election Day relies heavily on historical practice, precedent, and policy, and common sense. But the historical practice plaintiffs identify as not dispositive. Plaintiffs overread the court's precedent, and policy cannot override the words Congress chose. It's not overriding it. You're just twisting what the words Congress chose in a completely brand new way. You're also implying that Congress's new statute somehow is overriding the text of the Constitution, which I don't know how the hell they would have the authority to do that. God. Plaintiffs emphasize that in the mid to late 19th century, ballot receipt occurred on Election Day, and that in the Civil War era, states had authorized absentee voting and imposed strict Election Day deadlines for ballot receipt. But plaintiffs admit that they cannot precisely tie this historical practice to the text of Election Day statutes. Can't tie it in. Can't tie it in. Just happened to work out that way. Just happened to be. They could be received a day later. It just happened. It just happened. How can you don't know? You don't know it's because that's how they regarded the law. God. It's like arguing with a sophomore in high school. State legislatures may have used an Election Day deadline for any number of reasons unrelated to federal requirements. Really, for example, they may have shared plaintiffs' view that Election Day deadline avoids the appearance of fraud from late arriving ballots. Maybe that's why the Constitution kind of contemplates it the same way. At bottom, plaintiff's theory is that because 19th century Election Day statutes govern here, so too do 19th century voting practices. But statutes do not trap in amber every contemporary practice on the same subject matter. The phrase "trap in amber" here is designed to say doesn't cast it in stone forever. It's just a little bit more artistic way of phrasing it. Plaintiff's interpretation of Election Day statutes is at odds with Yuakawa, which presupposes states retain power to set ballot receipt deadlines. Doesn't presuppose that. Not how you read it. You just started to read that into Yuakawa. That's not what Yuakawa says. At oral argument, plaintiffs in their amicus, the United States offers ways to reconcile their interpretation of Election Day statutes with Yuakawa, but their theories are unpersuasive. Yeah, unpersuasive to someone who's decided this before this case even started. Plaintiffs argue that Foster versus Love's definition of election as the combined actions of voters and officials meant to make a final selection of office holder must mean the combined actions of ballot casting and receipt. But Foster is not about ballot receipt and nowhere mentions it. Foster, so she doesn't like Foster. She doesn't get anything from Foster. Finally, plaintiffs' policy arguments about election integrity and voter confidence are properly directed to legislatures, not courts. Well, according to Amy Coney Barrett, it's the courts are all about what you feel, and it feels to me it feels as if you're joining up with that perspective in this, because you sort of feel a certain way about having ballots coming in whenever the hell they jolly well please. Plaintiffs argue that Mississippi's election system violates Election Day statutes because Postal Service and common carriers allow mail to be recalled before it's delivered to election officials, meaning that the elector's choice is not actually made as of Election Day. Because for all you know, when you drop it on the mail Election Day, they're going to say, oh, we're not taking this as invalid postage or whatever reasons. Even if plaintiffs are right about Mississippi law, they would still lose the challenge they have pressed in this litigation that post-Election Day ballot receipt is itself unlawful. Post-Election Day receipt considered on its own does not conflict with the Election Day statutes, and state law is preempted only so far as the conflict extends. We should just direct our post office to not deliver any of these ballots after Election Day. So that was what Barrett said. That's what Barrett said. I'm 100% confident that the justice who purchased multiple Haitian children will recognize that birthright applies only to children of American citizens. Terrible choice. Terrible choice. May God save us from Jewish Jew haters. This is true. Perlito, it's Election Day, like birthday, Independence Day. That was a great clip of him when he was questioning in oral arguments. So this was pretty disastrous. No way to slice it. The silver lining is that it seems, seen as how there's so much deference being given to Yuakawa, that if in fact the Save America Act were to pass, you would think that would preempt whatever implications are being drawn from Yuakawa. So this wouldn't, it would effectively nullify this decision of the court. We'll read a little bit of Alito's dissent. Federal law designates the Tuesday next after the first Monday in November as Election Day. Election Day, Election Day. That's 3 U.S.C. 21. Provides that elections for federal office must be held on that date. As the court explains, an election is expression of the electorate's choice, but because the electorate is a collective body consisting of many individuals, the way in which it expresses its choice is less straightforward than would be if the case if the electorate were a single individual. If the electorate were an individual, it could issue a document declaring that specified men and women were selected to fill the federal offices for which the candidates had competed. But because the electorate is a collective body, it cannot express its selections in that way. You need to have a vote. It's the collection of ballots cast by individuals, not appointment by one individual. Taken all together, this collection is the equivalent of a single document. So when all these people vote, what he's trying to say here is when everyone's casting their ballot, it's the collective decision that's being made. This expression, electors' choices, is conveyed to the responsible election officials when the collection of individual ballots is completed. You cannot say that the job is done if, oh, we're going to sit around and decide and figure out when election day is over. We're in election season. At that point, the electorate authoritatively expresses its choices, and what the election day statutes demand is that this authoritative choice be made on election day. Election day, Amy. Election day. If ballots received after election day are added to the set of ballots that dictate the election's outcome, the electorate's choice does not occur on election day, and federal election day statutes are violated. It's pretty simple. It's really it's that simple. I mean, he goes on for 20 pages more. I think there's other dissents in here. Is there one dissent in here? I really don't want to go much further in reading this case. Instead, I just want to call to you how it is we ended up getting Amy Coney Barrett and the political machinations which got us here. And it's a little bit of a history lesson going back to 2020. Because there was another woman who was supposed to be in the seat that is now being occupied by Amy Coney Barrett. And if we had this woman there, you and I would have seen a lot more decisions that we would find pleasing and favorable and in accordance with, basic understandings of the law, not these inverted twist-ups that we seem to get from Amy Coney Barrett on the regular. Before I get there, Joe, what I understand is that Amy Coney Trader said that absentee ballots can be counted 5 days after the election. She said absentee ballots, not general ballots. California sends ballots to everybody. They're not absentee ballots. Yeah, but her point is that as long as they make you make your choice by election day, whatever the state's rules are, that's up to the state. So that's why this is going to be calling the shots for California unless there's a change in the law, unless Save America gets passed and restricts, and Congress by law restricts when ballots must be received by. But she's essentially saying that they're silent on that. Now, I can assure you that assuming Save America Act is passed, these leftist states like California will say it's, violative of the law, of the Constitution, and that it's too restrictive. But the implication is too restrictive on states' plenary authority to conduct the time, place, and manner. But I did look enough through the decision and dissent, and I'm not going to be able to pull it up quick enough now to invest time, because it'll take me 10 minutes to find it. That's where I saw it. Let me see if I get it in under 30 seconds. So I think it was in the decision. Not in the dissent, where she basically was saying that if in fact there was a statute to the contrary, which, it seemed to be that it would govern and not be deemed unconstitutional violation of state authority. And that there are many ways that Congress has limited time, place, and manner. So this would be another limitation to that effect. President's Day, birthday, Pride Month, election month. Am I seeing a pattern? You are. So they want everyone sleeping in there. With an absentee ballot, you must register, show why you need it, show your identification. It's not about sending out a freaking mail to every homeless piece of crap. And she doesn't care about the policy. She doesn't care about the public policy, the impacts of that. Her defense of that is talk to your legislature about that. Which that is actually the part of her decision that I can agree with. I can agree with the fact that it's not up to the court to set up and insulate good public policy. They're simply supposed to interpret the law. My problem is her interpretation of the law is pretty stupid. it's a pretty twisted type of read to try and read election day as being when a decision is made, even if we have no idea what the decision is. But with respect to, you know, her claim of like, it's just because this might be spelled disaster, well, then tell your Congress to fix it, disaster. That's not for us to do. That's actually something that's fair. That's a perspective I can certainly get behind. The left never sees that perspective. The other ones were continually screaming for judicial legislation. And that's what that is. Judicial legislation is when the court says, we're going to sort of write our own laws here, rather than interpreting statute. But I want to explain to you how it is we got to Amy Coney Barrett. Well, at least one person's pretty interesting theory on this. Let me take a quick look, make sure I didn't miss anything. Zon says, so those who don't know, Citizen Vigilante can be watched for free on Twitter. Elon put it out there since so many places banned it in Europe. Really? Really? I did not know that. I'm going to try to watch it now. Now I'm very curious. How long is it? How long is it? That sounds like a good watch party. An hour and 28 minutes. What do you guys think? Interesting. This is it. It's like a real movie that's just up there on Twitter. Justice isn't given, it's taken back. The system failed, he won't. What do you guys think? Should we have a watch party? Maybe a locals watch party. Maybe a locals and members. That sounds like a good idea. I like that idea a lot. I like that idea a lot. Get the popcorn, make a night of it. Maybe sometime this week. I like it. I like it a lot. All right. Let's get back to how did we end up with ACB instead of Barbara Lagoa on the Supreme Court? I Have Thoughts by Brittany Sheehan. And she does a great job of breaking down and reminding us as to like the timing of how everything went down. If you've been a conservative on social media today, you've seen the frustration. Justice Amy Coney Barrett just wrote the opinion on late arriving mail ballots and people aren't happy. The question showing up everywhere is how did we end up with ACB instead of Barbara Lagoa? I have thoughts on that. It's September 2020. RBG just died. President Trump has a Supreme Court seat to fill. Florida has 29 electoral votes up for grabs. And a Monmouth University poll conducted the same month that Biden was leading the state 50-45 in Florida. This is before we recognized how staunchly conservative Florida actually is. The Real Clear Politics average of all Florida polls told the same story, Biden up by 1 to 3 points across the board. Trump was trailing in a state he could not afford to lose. According to CNN, flying back to Washington the night Ginsburg died, Trump was already quizzing aides about whether Barbara Lagoa could secure him Florida's 29 electoral votes. That was his first instinct. Not her judicial record, not her originalism, Florida. Which, by the way, totally makes sense. If you know Trump, this totally makes sense. On Fox and Friends, that Monday, Trump said, She's excellent. She's Hispanic. She's a terrific woman. From everything I know, I don't know her. Florida, we love Florida. And Lagoa made sense. Daughter of Cuban exiles, born in Miami, the first Cuban-American woman ever to sit in the Florida Supreme Court, in a state where Cuban voters can make or break you. She was a walking political asset. How did we not get her? But her connection to Cuban Miami went deeper than biography. As a young lawyer, Lagoa was part of the pro bono legal team that represented Elian Gonzalez's Miami family. Get out of here. You guys remember Elian Gonzalez? The little kid on the raft coming from Cuba? Elian was the young Cuban boy found adrift at sea after his mother drowned trying to escape cashless Cuba in 1999. The Clinton administration ultimately sent him back to Cuba over the objections of his Miami relatives because Clintons heartless. The case still burns in Cuban-American Miami, and Lagoa was on the right side of it. Florida Republicans were practically giddy. Congressman Matt Gaetz said on September 20th, if the president picks Barbara Lagoa, they will be dancing salsa with joy in Hialeah well past November. So he's like, this will help. This will give you Florida. Worth noting, Lagoa had already been confirmed to the 11th Circuit by an 80 to 15 Senate votes. So Democrats kind of liked her. They voted for her overwhelmingly because they have a hard time voting against a Hispanic woman, a Cuban woman. Hard to attack someone you already put on the bench. Even Democrats knew what she represented. Democratic pollster Ferdinand Amandi said picking Lagoa would be a play for women, Hispanics, and most importantly, Florida's 29 electoral votes, calling her the conservative Cuban version of Sonia Sotomayor. So what happened? I have a theory and think the time and tell a story. Earlier that September, Lagoa was part of a 6-4 ruling on the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. The case involved Florida's law requiring felons to pay their fines before having their voting rights restored. Florida voters had passed Amendment 4 in 2018 to restore felon voting rights. The Republican-led legislature added a condition, pay what you owe first. Lagoa sided with the majority and upheld the law. The judiciary's job is to check constitutionality, not legislate from the bench. This was a separation of powers ruling, and she got it right. As a result, felons who hadn't paid their fines remained ineligible to vote. Democrats were livid. All 10 Democrats in the Senate Judiciary Committee wrote her a letter demanding she recuse herself from the case. Liberal commentators called her ruling an audition for the Supreme Court shortlist. Liberal legal publication Above Law wrote that her ruling could easily be a difference in deciding Florida's electoral votes. No, it couldn't. The felons? The felons? Really? Easily. Easily. Billionaire Michael Bloomberg, you remember that schmuck, former New York City mayor, failed 2020 Democratic presidential candidate who burned through more than $1 billion of his own money before dropping out in March 2020, had already pledged an additional $100 million to help Biden win Florida. But he wasn't done spending. On September 22nd, Bloomberg announced that he had raised more than $16 million to pay the fines and fees, roughly $32,000 of Florida felons. The goal was to get them registered before Florida's October 5 deadline. The $16 million felon fine payment wasn't a standalone act of charity. It was one piece of a much larger play to flip the states. In a memo, Bloomberg's own organization described it as a cost-effective way of adding votes to the Democratic column. That's not my characterization, that's theirs. So he's basically going to take care of these felons' fines, which are standing in the way of them getting registered, and hopefully add more Democrats to vote for Biden. Bloomberg exploited a loophole that Florida's own lawyers had created. During the court fight over the felon voting law, the state's own legal team had argued that third parties were perfectly free to pay those fines. Bloomberg heard that and wrote a $16 million check. He's like, oh, okay, I'll pay their fines. Now let's get them all registered. Lagoa's ruling was neutralized overnight. The 32,000 people the law would have kept from voting got their fines cleared and could now register. A legal win that took months to secure evaporated in a week. Florida fought back and lost. Republicans in Florida didn't take it lying down. They didn't like the fact that he was paying off their fines. At the request of Governor Ron DeSantis, AG Ashley Moody ordered a criminal investigation into Bloomberg's move. She sent letters to both the FBI and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement citing potential violations of election law. Trump called it a criminal act on Fox News on September 24th, saying it's a felony. He's actually giving money to people. He's paying people to vote. But he wasn't. He technically found a good loophole. It doesn't matter because Bloomberg had used the state's own argument against it. There was no legal ground to stand on. The investigation went nowhere. The fines were paid and the voters were registered. Here's where it gets interesting. According to CNN's reporting, based on nearly a dozen sources, White House officials had begun making plans for Trump to meet with Lagoa in person. Then that idea got scrapped. Barrett supporters inside the White House, including White House counsel Pat Cipollone and Vice President Mike Pence, moved quickly to lock in their pick before Trump could change his mind. They ran out the clock. On Capitol Hill, freaking cocaine Mitch McConnell had already told Trump that senators felt comfortable with Barrett and that anything complicating the confirmation timeline needs to be avoided at all costs. So he basically said, if you want to get your pick, it's got to be Barrett. That's what jackass Mitch McConnell did. Schmuck. Trump never sat down with Lagoa. He nominated Amy Coney Barrett on September 26th. The evening before announcing Barrett, Trump was still polling guests at a fundraiser about whom he should pick. When someone suggested Lagoa, he said, let her know she's going to have her chance. So in 8 days, one Supreme Court seat, September 18th, Ginsburg dies. Trump immediately focuses on Florida, starts floating Lagoa's name. 2 days later, Florida Republicans are publicly lobbying for Lagoa, gets saying they'll be dancing salsa in Hialeah. The next day, Trump calls Lagoa excellent on Fox and Friends. Barrett meets with Trump at the White House. When asked if he planned to meet with Lagoa during his upcoming Miami trip, Trump said publicly, I may. She's highly thought of. Then on September 22nd, Bloomberg announces $16 million to pay fines for 32,000 Florida felons, and her ruling went away in a single day. Then the next day, Florida's Attorney General opens criminal investigation to Bloomberg. New National Review reports Trump is expected to meet with Lagoa in Miami that Friday. September 24th, Trump calls Bloomberg's act criminal. And the next day, Trump is in Miami at Doral for Latinos for the Trump Roundtable. No meeting with Lagoa takes place. It's been quietly scrapped. Trump never explained why. And the next day, the day after that, he nominated Barrett. Lagoa never gets her meeting. Now, I want to be honest here. There's no reporting that directly connects Bloomberg's move to Trump's decision to go with Barrett. The inside story is that Barrett's allies in the White House ran a fast, organized campaign to lock her in before Trump could waive her. That's documented. So she was pushing hard to become a Supreme Court justice. What I'm connecting are the dots around the timing. Make of it what you will, but I think about what Bloomberg's accomplished in one move. He paid off the fines Lagoa's ruling had used to keep 32,000 likely Democratic voters off the rolls. He didn't just add voters. He neutered a court win for Trump's campaign at a time when Trump's whole interest in Lagoa was Florida's electoral math. She was supposed to help him with the Cuban voters, and the courts had handed him a ruling that kept what Bloomberg had characterized as Democratic voters off the rolls. Bloomberg erased the second half of that equation the week Trump was deciding. This is what sophisticated political money looks like. Bloomberg didn't run an ad. He didn't hold a rally. He wrote a check in the exact moment it would do the most damage, and he used the other side's own legal argument to do it. The lesson for conservatives is simple. Winning in court isn't enough anymore. A court victory can be undone by a billionaire with a checkbook before the ink is dry. But still, you would ask yourself this. Here's the problem with what she's writing here, and I'll come to that in a moment. Election integrity works, voting law fights, and judicial nominations all happen inside a much bigger political chess game. That's true. Barbara Lagoa is still on the 11th Circuit, still writing opinions that conservatives cheer. She just never got her Friday meeting in Miami. Here's the question I have, though. Here's the question that I have for Brittany Sheehan, because this is an interesting theory. Wouldn't that make it more likely that she would get Lagoa if he knows that you're going to have 32,000 convicts there? Don't you want to make the Cubans all happy with you? This is what I don't understand about this. I think the history here is very interesting and the timing on it. So if you ask me my opinion, to me, what was most important when I was reading this was less her speculation about the impact of Bloomberg, because I think if anything, Bloomberg's actions would have motivated him to find a Florida justice, Florida Cuban justice, bring the Cubans on board with him. So that's why I disagree respectfully with Brittany Sheehan here. I appreciate the history that she brings to us, But to me, it just logic doesn't, the logic isn't making sense. If you're Donald Trump and you just heard there's going to be 32,000 new Democrats registered for Biden in Florida, wouldn't you want to pump up your Florida numbers by bringing in Lagoa? So if anything, it would have been that much more of a motive for him to do it. So I don't think it's Bloomberg who did it. I think it's Mitch McConnell. That's what I think it is. I think it's Mike Pence and Mitch McConnell who are basically saying to him, we're never going to get this justice passed in time, because everyone was assuming that you can't get it passed after Election Day, especially if he loses, which in 2020 he was declared the loser. So they basically were like, he's like, I'm going to get justice in there. I have to make it Barrett. I have no choice. The selection was made by Mitch McConnell and Mike Pence, Cipollone, who were all telling him, you're never going to get the confirmation, which that probably was a lie. That probably was a lie. Why wouldn't they confirm Lagoa? They're going to risk losing it and getting a leftist in there? That doesn't make any sense. Why would they not confirm Lagoa? Who the hell is voting against Lagoa? She passed 80 to 15. So none of this is making sense. None of the Mike Bloomberg stuff is making sense to me. We're stuck with Amy Coney Barrett because basically I think Trump was bluffed into believing that he had no choice. It was Barrett or nobody. That's why we're here. And that's where we're at. No, I agree with you. It's a great call, by the way. Fans here, Allegan News is doing a great job making an awesome point that both of them are from Indiana. Both Bible thumping. Yeah, makes sense. And both also like your classic Tea Party conservatives. All about the establishment, the establishment, the establishment. Useless. Here's Stephen Miller weighing in on today's Watson decision.
I think was pretty clever how he handled this today about this case. He basically said, look, there are other great cases out there. We're going to talk about those with Jonathan Turley. But nevertheless, he was disappointed that his appointee to the court, Amy Coney Barrett, wrote that majority.
Well, look, let's just call it like it is. Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett decided to cave to the radical left. Alito was so clear in his wording about what election day means. Nobody could read the statute, could read that opinion, could read what Alito wrote and come to any other conclusion. It's election day, not election week, not election month, not election months. So this was really a travesty, and it underscores, Laura, why we have to keep fighting to pass the Save America Act. 80 million Americans elected a Republican Senate majority, and they elected a Republican Congress to deliver on this fundamental priority. It must get done, Laura.
Well, what is it?
We have a Republican in the Oval Office, a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican court. And somehow, and 87% of the world behind this, and somehow we still can't get our elections sorted. Just think about that for a second. We hold everything. Everything. I mean, this is a level of power and authority. And the one thing that we care about more than anything is securing our elections. And between the court and our Senate, we can't get it done. We can't get it done. It's astonishing. This is like Satan's miracle. This is what it is. It's Satan's miracle. It's hard. Give the devil his due. I mean, we hold everything. What do we not hold? Oh, we don't have a supermajority in the Senate? We can't get elections counted on election day. I want to share something with you. Let me share something with you. I'm going to remind you why you should hate Fox News. Okay? I'm going to remind you why you should hate Fox News. Uselessness. Okay? It's not just their stupid website, which is annoying. No, it's their opinions, which suck. I made 7 minutes into this report, and I'm just like, you're a bunch of idiots. Your audience are idiots. People who swallow this. This is stupid. All right. We're going to watch some of this report. I'm going to watch some of this report. I'm going to try and keep my temper in check.
Breaking news, U.S. Supreme Court decision is now in on a challenge led by Republicans to late arriving ballots in elections. Shannon Bream has the ruling. She's got the news and the headline now from the U.S. Supreme Court. Shannon.
All right, guys, this is not a win for Republicans who were challenging this. Mississippi has a state law which allows ballots to be counted, mail-in ballots after Election Day. If they come in, they're postmarked and meet the state requirements, but is a 5-4 loss for Republicans. And an interesting cobbling together of who wrote on this. Justice Barrett wrote the opinion. Justice Roberts joined her along with Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson. So those 5 stuck together on this. The dissent comes from Justice Alito. Thomas Gorsuch and Kavanaugh joined him. And essentially what the majority said is that these federal statutes setting Election Day don't prescribe or they don't stand in conflict with states that want to say, okay, we have a procedure to count ballots after Election Day. Justice Alito, writing for the dissent, says today's decision is inconsistent with the terms of the Election Day statutes, contemporary election law principles, 2 centuries of historical practice, and the case law on the question presented.
Yep.
So if you're a state out there that counts ballots after Election Day based on your state law, that state law will stand. We wait on more opinions now, guys. More to come.
So, Shannon, that means, for example, in California, where it takes them forever to count ballots, this doesn't help that situation at all, right?
Of course not.
It does not, because basically they're deferring to the states on when they can count those ballots after Election Day. They say the federal statute may set Election Day, but these states that have allowed for procedures outside of that and the way that they collect and how and when they collect those ballots, those state laws are going to be good. Mississippi was the state here, but yes, this will apply to places like California as well.
Shannon, I've learned from you that you go to the dissent first. Have you had time to do that? And if so, what did the justices who disagreed with this rule? What did they find?
Well, yeah. So Justice Alito leads them with Thomas Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. And they just say, Alito says, there's a situation here in which it doesn't comply, he thinks, with our understanding. And remember, during the actual arguments on this case, he said we have Election Day. The word means something like you would say birthday or Independence Day. It's that day. He said things should be consummated by Election Day. That was his argument. So not surprising that he is the one writing the dissent. He was the most vocal during the argument, but he says it just doesn't comport with the law as he understands it. And he's got 3 who agree with him, but you need more than that. So again, it was Justices Barrett and just.
Okay, so we got our overview. Okay, all right. Give us give us
Justices Barrett and Roberts,
get
who joined with the 3 liberal justices for this loss for Republicans challenging this Mississippi count.
Got it. Okay, we get more, right?
Yeah, we could get more, right?
Don't go
More to
anywhere,
come.
Shannon.
Yeah,
right?
more coming.
Stay plugged in. Want to
I'm
bring
right
in
here.
John Yu, former Deputy Assistant AG. Sir, welcome. What do you think of this ruling, hot off the press from the U.S. Supreme Court?
Who's this blonde chick? Tell me who the blonde chick is. Because when I was watching this, she was getting me very annoyed. She was getting me very, very annoyed. What's her name? You all know her name. Some of you know her name. Tell me the blonde chick's name.
Bill, 2 other lessons I would just add to Shannon. One, this puts a lie to the idea that the Supreme Court is just there rubber stamping the Trump administration. Here, the Trump administration took a loss. And
who cares? Who freaking cares? Jeez. Oh my God. Now I'm on Taylor Swift. Jeez, this site sucks.
Some breaking news, U.S.
Have election count.
Got it. Okay, we get
Shannon.
No one cares.
This puts a lie to the idea that the Supreme Court is just there rubber stamping the Trump administration. Here, the Trump administration took a loss. And the second thing this puts a lie to is that you've got
not Shannon Breen.
Justice conservative.
The one on the bottom.
block. Here you saw Justice
She used to
Barrett
be on the
and Chief
5.
Justice Roberts joining with the 3 liberal justices. One other point I would add, in addition to Shannon's analysis, is that this is not about the constitutional power. If Congress wanted to pass Say the Save Act, which I know President Trump is pushing for, and wanted to set deadlines about the election is on this day, and you have this much time to count, Congress could do that. All the court here is saying is that when Congress set the day for elections,
don't worry, it's
it
no
was not
biggie.
passing any kind of rules about
you can still
when
get the
and
Save
how you
America
count
Act.
those ballots. But Congress can do that under the Constitution if it wants to.
John,
They didn't say it definitively.
Sort of like, just for people
they
at
implied
home,
that.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but
yeah, this is a dumb
let's say
question.
You have your utility bill, and it's due. Things are tight, but you make it, and and you're sending it in by snail mail, and it's postmarked by the due date. Then you're free and clear. There will be no penalty. Is that
This idiot, Dana Perino, is trying to justify the logic here, saying that when you pay your when you get a due date for pay your electric bill, as long as you drop in a check in the mail by that day, it's fine. So this should be the same. What the heck? This is our conservative analysis. Oh, it's just like that. Of course, the Constitution talks about this all the time. The courtesy that's being granted to you, that they extend the time, pretty much the same thing as like our, that's what the Constitution was doing. What the hell are you talking about? What does that do with anything? This is the thinking of someone who thinks our country is a democracy and every person has to get their vote. Get your freaking vote in time. Dana Perino making analysis.
Sort of like this?
Shannon, I'm sorry. Dana, you're exactly right. Yeah, I mean, for the folks at home and for your hypothetical, that's right. You get the ballot in on or before Election Day.
This is not PSE&G.
One other thing.
This is not
Shannon
Con Ed.
emphasized this in her description, too. Is that this is still up to the states. The Constitution allows each state to decide how
Get
once
your
you
vote in,
could live in a
whatever you
state like
want.
the one you were talking about.
They give you a courtesy.
Before, where the state can
That's
say,
not
we
the
got to
Constitution
get the
gives
ballot
you.
by Election Day.
You're taking
Those
courtesy
are
out
all-
of me.
And we're going to count it by Election Day. I think that's what Florida
communist,
does.
socialist type of
That's
perspective
okay.
of things.
Or you can live in a
Stupid
state.
schmuck. You stupid. This is the same thing. It's the same thing. People talk about like, that government charity is, with socialist programs is the same thing as charity. No. If a private entity decides that they want to extend a courtesy to me or others like me and say, we're giving you your due date to pay, but we're going to accept it. We decided we're going to accept it by that day. Who's the entity which is extending that grace? Who is the entity? Who's the person suffering from that? Well, that's Verizon. That's AT&T. That's your cable network. They feel like it helps their business. It's worth it to them to deal that way with their customers. Who's taking it on the chin for that? Oh, it's those private entities who are making a decision that works for them. They're making a decision that works for them. Of course they have the right to do that. Of course they're going to do that because it's good business. Are they legally obligated to do that? Of course not. When a state decides, oh, sure, just have some sort of postmark that's entered on it that looks good, and we're going to accept it as if it was mailed on the right day and as if we received it on the right day, who's the entity who suffers? Not the state, you and me. So they're extending charity at your expense, at my expense, that we are stuck waiting, aside from the additional fraud that's enabled by having that extended time, which is so apparent and in your face as to be like shocking to be ignoring that. But just the very act of making us wait, that is infringing on my time. It's infringing on your time. It's infringing on your confidence in the integrity of their election. That is not something that the state has a right to infringe on. They're taking from you. They're taking from you your confidence in the fact that their election actually has integrity. Where the freak do they have the authority to do that? That's why I say it's a socialist perspective. If I want to give charity of my own volition, that's fine. Same way cable can give cable company give charity of time. Is that what works for them? If you want to take something from me and give it to others, you want to take my confidence in the integrity of our elections and give it and dispense it out in giving added time to a handful of lazy schmucks who decide to drop the ballot in the mail in the ballot 10 minutes before the deadline? No, you're taking from me. That's thievery. But this jackass, this airheaded blonde, oh, it's just like when you pay your pay bill. As long as you get your bill, you mail it in time. Astonishing. This is the conservative Fox, very conservative Fox.
Like my own state of California, which says we're going to take 30 days to count. That's okay.
No, it's
Congress
not.
can fix that if it wants. The Constitution doesn't prohibit
we
that.
We can't get the
But
Congress to
Congress
do that.
Does. The Supreme Court is saying that's up to each state.
86% of the country wants that.
In your hypothetical, to each utility company to decide for you.
So just the other point is, yes, Congress could do that, but also the state legislatures could. So for those who are advocating and wanted the Supreme Court to rule in a different way, they can take that fight to those states and try to pass that in their state legislature.
Now, if you can't get them out because they're stealing elections.
Excellent point, Dana, that this is...
Oh, yeah, you can also vote out. You can vote out Vladimir Putin also. You can vote out Xi Jinping. You don't like what Xi Jinping is doing? Just vote him out. Just vote him out. Well, you don't like having communists? You don't like have fascists running everything here? Just vote him out. You got your elections. Just go to your elections. Just vote him out. What the hell are you talking about? The problem is we can't vote them out. They're stealing elections. And it's like, oh, just vote them out. How the hell are you voting them out? What does that even mean? Are you an idiot? Do you understand what we're fighting about here? We're fighting over control over who's in charge here. And you're saying, well, get rid of those people. How are we supposed to when you're co-opting the very nature as to how we remove them? This is so stupid. Just though you don't like it, then vote them out. How? How are you supposed to vote them out? Well, if they're losing, they'll hold their election for an extra 40 days till they finish counting. Vote them out. Are you an idiot?
Generally, how our Constitution is hardwired, most of the important decisions in life are really supposed to be up to the states. So if you don't like this rule, you can get your state legislature to change it.
No, you can't.
If you don't like this rule, you can move to, if you don't like it in California and the way we do business, move to Texas, move to Florida. Or maybe you like the other way, but our system depends on competing states and leaving them the discretion.
Oh, yeah, we should just abandon certain states. We should just abandon certain states. So, I guess that's a no-go zone. Can't live in California, can't live in Oregon, can't live in Washington, can't live in Massachusetts, can't live in Vermont, can't live in New York, can't live in New Jersey if you want to have any sort of control. What the hell are you talking about? The powers that be, they decide to just move to another state. Well, just vote them out. Idiots. In any other area, you can say vote them out. Not when it comes to stealing elections.
If Congress were to go forward and pass the Save America Act, part of which would require proof of citizenship and an ID at a polling station, does this tell you anything about how that would end up or not?
Bill, the hardest thing about predictions, Yogi Bear said, is that they're about the future. So,
but this is your job.
Guess on how this. It is. Well, it's your job. I'm just. So here's how I would say it. If you look at the majority opinion, it reaffirms the idea that, as a preliminary matter, this is up to the states. But then parts of Justice Barrett's opinion state clearly, but ultimately it's up to the federal government and Congress how federal elections will be done. Notice this is only about federal elections. States can still do whatever they want for their own officers. So, Bill, if I were to take that language out of the majority opinion and project forward, I would say the elements in the SAVE Act would be upheld by the Supreme Court if they try to set uniform standards for federal elections on all those issues you mentioned.
Let's take you back to the way back machine, so you don't have to think about the future. Let's think about the past. And 250 years ago, when George Washington and others advocated that the decisions that rule the people should be closest to the people. And what's really amazing about our country is that we have all these different states.
This is where I started. Believe it or not, when I was watching before, this is the part where I was like, oh my God, this woman's crazy. Idiots. Listen to the nonsense she's about to spew now.
And you can govern yourselves in your states, and yet we have this union. And just if you could go back to first principles for a moment and how this decision would fit into that.
It doesn't.
Dana, I feel so much better now. I get to talk about the past and things we know happened. And you could say the provision we've been talking about is a sign of exactly the tension that our founders had to solve 250 years ago. They had a government then just run by states. They knew that was too weak. They also didn't want to create a federal government that took over.
It's a federal
so the
election.
Elections Clause is a great balance of that. It says states will set the time, places, and manner of elections, like redistricting, like the time ballots are counted, like the time ballots are received. But it's always
no. There's election day. They put in election day, not when it's received.
Subject to congressional override. That if the states went too far,
these idiots would have said the same thing Amy Coney Barrett said.
Would have the power to set a uniform rule. It's hard to believe, but 250 years ago, George Washington, the founders, the Federalists, like Alexander Hamilton and James Madison,
so tell me, oh, this is the beauty of federalism.
So opposed the federal government that they would refuse to hold elections at all.
Beauty of federalism will give them all the time in the world they need to start
now we have too many
adjusting their ballots.
Back then they were worried we'd have too few. So they actually contemplated the idea that Congress would have to run elections in states because some states would just refuse to participate because they hated the government so much. So that's a great example, Dana, of the balance between national and state. And like I said, that's hardwired throughout the Constitution in almost every area other than national security, foreign affairs, spending, and taxing and interstate commerce and trade.
John, terrific work. John, thank you for that. And we will keep you on standby in the event that we get more. It's 14 minutes past the hour, 10 o'clock. And having done...
Aggravating. Oh, was she? She was press secretary for George Bush? God. Aggravating. Women in politics. Doesn't work.
Done this for a couple of years. We know that
get rid of
the window
How do I get
is
rid
still
of this
open,
stupid
but there's no
thing?
guarantee. John, thank you.
Can't listen to this idiots anymore. For the rest of our SCOTUS issues, we'll look to Donald Trump, where he was weighing in with his thoughts about decisions as they came rolling in. So when he was weighing in on this case, he wrote, in light of the tremendous loss in the Supreme Court today concerning voters' rights and the fact that the people's votes are allowed to be counted long after election is over, it's more important than ever to pass the Save America Act, which is 1, all voters must show photo ID identification. 2, they must show proof of citizenship. 3, no mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military deployment, and travel. No excuse for politician or otherwise to be against the above 3 requirements. There's only one reason to oppose: cheating. House of Representatives has approved this vital act 3 times. U.S. Senate seems unable to do so. In a time when there is powerful communist movement taking place in our country, one more dangerous than World War I, World War II, Pearl Harbor, or September 11th, all Democrats and our 5 Republican Senate holdouts, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Tom Tillis, Bill Cassidy, and Mitch McConnell must vote to save our country. We need no more excuses. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. That was his thoughts on this. What he lost on was that Supreme Court decided not to hear his case on E. Jean Carroll, not to hear his application for to overturn and vacate the $90 million decision against E. Jean Carroll, which was a travesty of justice. But we should not be, so he lost there. We should not, in that he was lost in the sense that they said they're not going to listen to his case. We shouldn't be surprised by that, because it seems like exactly the sort of thing that they wouldn't want to touch, because they don't want to look too deferential to him. So that's not surprising, but take note of it. As he says, surprisingly, I don't think it's surprising. Supreme Court declined to review a fake case brought against me by a woman I never met, decades old, celebrity photo line standing with her husband does not count. I will continue the fight against this weaponization of lawfare case against me, including a ridiculous claim of defamation, with all my power and strength. I don't know how. I don't know what he has left to fight with. But this case is really against the United States of America and all it stands for, and should never be allowed to happen to another president or candidate to be. I mean, frankly, it's disgusting how New York created this law for an instant speck of time going back many decades in order to wrongfully nab me. That's true. They did. It was tailor-made, and this injustice cannot be allowed to stand. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I don't know how, under the law, he's going to actually succeed in that, but I'm not sure what's available to him at this point. And he did point out this big win just moments ago in the Slaughter case, confirming presidential power in our country to remove executive branch officers and agency appointees. This basically today in the Slaughter case is where the Supreme Court basically reaffirmed a theory and said it's not a theory, it's the law, and that's the unitary executive theory. Basically, what they said in this case is that all power and who it is that stays on that's working the federal government flows from Donald Trump. It flows from the president, which is unitary. The unitary executive theory is something which advocates of it, like myself, said it's the most logical way to read anything. And they reaffirmed it and said, basically, he can fire anyone who works in the federal government. It's up to him. Now, they made a distinction in a different case of Cook versus the United States, where she's on the board of governors of the Federal Reserve, and they pretended that that's not a, and the Supreme Court also, Amy Coney Barrett, yet again, decided that that's not considered part of the federal government. So that's beyond his purview. So he lost on the Cook case today, but he did win on the bigger case regarding who he can fire, which is basically anyone who works in the federal government. And they all work for him. So that was that. If you're keeping track of the scorecard for Trump today, it's 3 losses and 1 win. We're still waiting on birthright citizenship. Have no idea how that case is going to come out. God only knows. God only knows. But it's 3 losses and 1 win. He lost on E. Jean Carroll. He lost on Lisa Cook, and the biggest loss was obviously mail-in ballots. The win was in the second biggest case, where they basically said, big win just moments ago. Supreme Court in Slaughter case confirmed presidential power in our country to remove executive branch officers and agency appointees or representatives under Article 2. Long sought by United States presidents dating all the way back to the 1930s. It's such an honor to be the sitting president who won the historic and unprecedented ruling, one of the most important ever given with respect to presidential powers. He's so funny. It's such an honor to be sitting as president today. So, yeah. Anyway. What do we got going on here? We'll laugh my ass off. We got the Kids Act for the SAVE Act. We'll prove the establishment won. What is the Kids Act? A kids intimate safety partnership? Age checks to get online. You know how they should do like age checks to get online? They should be like should like ask like civics questions. How many U.S. senators do we have? How many of them have to vote to pass a bill? To break filibuster. That'd be great. That'd be great. Aristocratic South from old New Orleans money. I'll listen to all, hopefully 3 hours tomorrow. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate you stopping in and dropping a nice little tip for me. I don't think we're going to get 3 hours. Doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it. No resolution to California where I'm living. There's obvious fraud. Once again, I have no representation. They've legalized fraud. Are we headed to war? It's not time yet. It's not time yet. Just saying. It's not time yet. And finally, I promised I was going to give you an overview at the very least of Alex Murdaugh. So let's check out what happened today. I was talking to you yesterday about the parliamentarian. Before I get to Murdaugh, I was talking to you yesterday about how Thune is going to follow the parliamentarian, and that's why I don't think that attaching the SAVE Act to a budget bill is going to help. Here's Trump venting at Thune for that.
The parliamentarian, what were you asking about?
Yeah, have you talked with Thune about?
I have. No, I can't imagine why you keep a woman that was put there by Harry Reid and Barack Hussein Obama. I cannot understand it.
Okay.
The leader has the right to fire the person at will and put somebody else there. That would be, because we get so many negative rulings from her, the parliamentarian. She's been there for years, and she was put there by Harry Reid and Barack Hussein Obama. Harry Reid was a bad guy, and he was the leader, and he put her. And the speaker has the right to immediately fire her and put somebody else there. And it's not even believable that she's still there. She's obviously a good politician. Or
She is obviously a good politician, but she managed to stay popular there. What do I have here?
Birthright citizenship is next. What are your thoughts? Birthright citizenship. What are your thoughts? And will you accept it if it rules against you?
Well, I guess I have to accept it's the Supreme Court, so I'll accept. I think it's very bad for our nation. We're the only nation that does it. No other nation does that birthright citizenship. No, not even close. Some did it. They ended it. It's tremendously destructive. It's extremely costly. I don't know. It's up to them. But in terms of for the good of the country, it'd be great if they didn't allow it. It would be great.
Birthright citizenship is.
So.
Supreme Court blocked me from relieving student debt, but they didn't stop me. So far, I've relieved student debt for nearly 5 million Americans. A significant number are black borrowers. So you can chase your dreams, start a family, buy your first home, start a business, and so much more.
Yeah, that didn't happen under Biden administration at all. No one was able to chase their dreams. People were chasing toilet paper and milk under the Biden administration. Chase your dreams. That's the difference between these two presidents. He's like, what are we gonna do? The Supreme Court
blocked me from. Supreme Court blocked.
That's the difference between a fascist Democrat and our president.
Relieving student debt. Supreme Court blocked me.
Stop it. Listen to that cranky old man. All right, finally, let's get to Alex Murdaugh here. Alex Murdaugh's second murder trial will start next spring, judge rules. Alex Murdaugh, disbarred South Carolina attorney accused of killing his wife and son, will face his second murder trial next spring after his previous convictions were overturned on appeal. 58-year-old Murdaugh appeared in court Monday shackled in an orange jumpsuit for his first court appearance since his murder convictions were overturned. Circuit Court Judge Deborah McCaslin, replacing Judge Newman, who handled the first trial and has since retired, ruled the new trial will begin April 5th, 2027, subject to change, obviously. Murdaugh's attorneys filed several pretrial motions last week, including requests for change of venue, which they should really get, but they probably won't, for further independent testing of DNA evidence, and for Murdaugh to get access to a computer in prison. Though McCaslin did not rule on the motions Monday, the judge made clear she intends the trial to move forward without delay. When I say April 5th, we're picking a jury and going forward, she said. All these issues should be decided by then. Separate from the murder case, Murdaugh pleaded guilty to dozens of financial crimes and remains behind bars on concurrent state and federal sentences of 27 and 40 years. So he's not walking free anytime soon. Dozens of members of the public showed up early to court hoping to snag a seat within view of the man whose sprawling saga has already had enough twists to fill multiple true crime documentaries, dramatized shows, and best-selling books. The hearing marked the start of the road to retrial for Murdaugh. His case stems from June 2021. Fatal shootings of Murdaugh's wife, Maggie, and 22-year-old son Paul outside the family home in Islington, a small community in South Carolina's Low Country. I'll tell you right now, they also moved. One of the things they left out of this motion is they want him to be able to appear not in shackles next time he has to come in. And defense pretrial motions focus on issues related to venue and evidence, as well as Murdaugh's preparation for court appearance. His attorneys argue that client cannot receive the fair and impartial trial guaranteed to him in the 14th Circuit, which includes Colleton County, where his 2023 double murder trial was held. The basis for this motion is that among the most heavily publicized criminal prosecutions in the history of the state, for years, defending his family and the law firm with which his state was associated for generations have been the subject of saturating, sensational, and continuous media coverage. It's true. The attorneys know the 14th Circuit is where the Murdaugh name has been synonymous with local legal system for nearly a century, where the population is small and interconnected, and where the very documentaries, books, and films that have shaped public opinion were researched, filmed, and produced. Half the people there who are going to be in the jury pool probably have been interviewed about this case. McCaslin said Monday she'll give prosecutors time to respond to the motion and discuss it with Murdaugh's attorneys. If the attorneys cannot agree on whether or where to move the trial location, she will decide. I'd be very surprised if she punts on this. This is the sort of case every judge loves. So while they are entitled to it, they probably are entitled to a change of venue. I don't know that they're going to get it so fast. By the way, I forgot to mention, if you haven't hit like and subscribe yet, please do that. And make sure you check out my merch store. Link is in the description. I know that was random, but I haven't mentioned it in like 2 hours. So the attorneys also, and it's like this, that's what pays the bills, right? They got to pay the bills. The attorneys also filed a motion seeking an order to require the state to produce DNA evidence for an independent laboratory review. DNA evidence was collected from underneath Maggie Murdaugh's left hand fingernails at the scene, wrote the Murdaugh's attorneys. SLED determined this DNA was from an unknown and unrelated male. No further analysis was attempted. This evidence, however, is crucial to the defense, obviously, because maybe she was fighting someone off. Murdaugh's attorney on Monday argued DNA analysis technology has advanced significantly since the killings in 2021. They suggested they would send the DNA sample to a laboratory such as Optimum, a Texas-based lab that has emerged as a leader in helping to solve cold cases through DNA sequencing combined with genealogy mapping. The lab was responsible for analyzing the DNA sample. It was critical to identifying and ultimately convicting University of Idaho student murderer Brian Kohlberger. We don't think it's a red herring. We think it's very important, defense attorney Jim Griffin said. It may turn out to be innocuous. We don't know. It's worth looking into. Prosecutors, however, wrote in a court file that DNA is limited consequence. Really? The scrapings under her fingernails are of limited consequence? And the investigators have sufficiently analyzed it. There's absolutely no evidence that a physical struggle took place between Maggie Murdaugh and her murderer. She has no defensive wounds, no indications of her hands or fingernails that she scratched her attacker, they argued in a filing. So what? Why, how did she get under their fingernails? What does that mean? I would think if you're interested in actual justice, you would want to know whose skin is under her nails. The judge expects to decide on that the next pretrial hearing is set for August 14th. The third motion requests the South Carolina Department of Corrections allow Murdaugh to access a secure laptop computer so he can go over any material associated with trial. Prosecutors have balked at the proposal to leave such valuable and sensitive information in Murdaugh's unsupervised possession. Where the hell is he going with it? He's in jail. He's shown he'll come with all manner of schemes to get money, and a laptop can be used for all sorts of nefarious purposes. You're a douchebag, Waters. Creighton Waters is a douchebag. The warden overseeing Murdaugh in prison, what do you think? He's going to be some sort of scam that he's going to run? Has he ever shown a propensity for running an online scam? This stupid, stupid, ridiculous defense. Like, this is just petty. The warden overseeing Murdaugh in prison informed McCaslin he would not allow Murdaugh to keep a laptop in his cell for safety reasons, the judge said. However, she said she would discuss with the warden the possibility of keeping a laptop in his office and the inmate would be allowed to view under supervision. Finally, Murdaugh and the prosecutors filed motions with unusually personal debate about his attire and appearance in court. The defense initially asked that he be allowed to come to court to all court appearances, including pretrial hearings, wearing civilian clothes and unshackled. Given the cameras in the courtroom, his defense argued, much like lawyers have in Tyler Robinson's case, his appearance in shackles and prison outfit could influence potential jurors. Bringing him in a jumpsuit, shackled like an animal, impacts their view. Dick Harpoon instead of potential jurors. It's going to make it more difficult for us to get a jury. There's enough people who have seen him in shackles. I don't know that. I think that's relatively inconsequential. This guy's not a serial killer. He's not Ted Bundy. He stole some money. That's all he's convicted of. Prosecutors pushed back on the request in court, arguing it is standard treatment for convicted inmates. To remind the court, Murdaugh is still charged with murder. The argument echoed the response to the original motion in which prosecutors wrote the presence of cameras is no basis to ignore normal security concerns. This case is ultimately about the fact that the defendant thinks he's special. He's not, prosecutors said. So there you go. It seems like August 14th, 6 weeks from now, is when we should expect to get some sort of clarity, certainly with respect to the motion about the DNA, which is very interesting because that really could help him if he manages to get it. I don't know why she would deny it, but who knows what's going to happen. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. Zion says, people, please buy his hats. I was told if you do it, he'll feed us mods that are locked in the basement like monkeys. It's true. Lots more food if you buy my hats. But let's face it. Let's be real. The hat's really freaking cool. The hat is freaking cool. And it's new. You might not have seen it. So I should share it with you. The link is in the description and pinned in the chat. But I should show you this because damn if it's not pretty. That's the hat right there. NYPD hat. Smart looking hat right there. If enough people buy the hat, I'll tell the story as to how it came to be. And there you go. My little John Hancock there. Someone's telling me this isn't consistent enough. This is very consistent. That really is my handwriting. And yes, my wife complains about it all the time. When I write, the only time I actually use my handwriting is when I'm writing like birthday cards. So the only people who know how to read my handwriting are my wife and offspring. And that's because they've read enough birthday cards from me that they're like, I can see how that sort of says Lawgic right there. I can sort of see it. That says good. There you go. Anyway, So that is my handwriting. No one else would write it quite like that. And that's on the back. That's what makes it a good Lawgic hat. Smart looking hat. I was thinking about putting it on this side, not this side, the other side, the signature. I was like, I think back is better. But so there you go. Anyway, that's my show for tonight. I thank you all for joining me. I will tell you all that, God willing, tomorrow I will be back here. You will be back here. We will all be back here covering the events of the day, so you're well informed, well apprised, and that in between now and then, I feel very confident that you are not going to be touching any of that stinking, verstunken lab meat, which was never meant for you. It was meant for they, them. And do not eat the bugs. Don't do it. Just don't. Gross. Have a good night, everyone. As always, Godspeed.